Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we're breaking down my top 4 ADP values according to Sleeper Redraft. I'm going to be doing different videos with, Yahoo, ESPN, even CBS for the future. But keep in mind that these are people that I think are valued specifically in Sleeper Redraft leagues. These are going to be 4 wide receivers that are in various ranges of your drafts. Getting a value on a top 5 wide receiver when you drafted them at 6 isn't particularly helpful. But I think some of these guys are very good bargains, and I think have the ability to massively surpass their ADP. The first wide receiver we are discussing today is Rashod Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going off the board as the wide receiver 20. I think this is a massive value. There's been reports that he's full go as of right now, suggesting that he shouldn't really have any limitations come week 1. The suspension almost certainly isn't happening, and he's going off the board as the 42nd overall pick or the 406 in 12-man redraft. I think this is a massive value. I think he should easily surpass wide receiver 20, assuming there are no reports of him, potentially re-aggravating any injuries or getting off to a really slow start. But, assuming that things progress and stay the same at the very least, I think that he is a massive value here. Taking a look at what is a limited sample size in the sense of from 2024, his target share in the 3 full games that he played technically 6% of snaps in a 4th game, but didn't have any targets and was taken out by Mahomes, had a multi-ligament knee injury. I'm just not going to include that for some of these stats here because it's really just skews the stats against him. But he had a 25.7% target share and a 34.1 target rate. Nearly 35% target rate is absolutely insane. Now, you take a look at the sample size from the first 3 games of 2024. In a full point PPR setting, he had 17.3 points in week 1, 18.5 in week 2, and then 29.1 in week 3. He did that on 9, 6, and 14 targets, the 14 targets being absolutely insane, and had 7, 5, and 12 receptions, 103, 75, and 110 total yards, and then 2 touchdowns in 3 games. Now, I want to take a look at his deployment. He was deployed about 50% of the time in the slot and out wide, being 50.5% in the slot specifically and 49.5% out wide specifically. I like that he's being able to be used all over the offense. I did see him win deep on a long, I believe it was a 9 route for a touchdown as well, suggesting that, he isn't just this short area kind of cheap, scammy PPR option, but he can be and probably will be, which is perfect for fantasy. All we care about are the total stats. We don't care how you get them. He's going to be connected to Mahomes, who, while his deep ball wasn't particularly great for Xavier Worthy this past season, he hasn't lost anything in the short area of the field. Now, taking a look once again in his limited sample size of yards per out run, his 3.16 were 2nd in the NFL. His PFF receiving grade of 85.5 was 11th. His yak per reception of 7.7 was 8th. And now keep in mind, he's being used kind of in that slot Travis Kelce-like role in the middle of the field, getting schemed open and then being able to burst upfield for additional yardage. Assuming, once again, we don't see any setbacks, I don't think there's any reason to doubt that he should be able to continue seeing this role. The main people that people are really worried about taking over this role potentially are, Xavier Worthy's really thin. He's better suited because of his elite speed to be more of your vertical threat, but can be used horizontally and in the short area of the field. But, Rashod Rice just isn't as good as Xavier Worthy in terms of just pure speed and being able to be a burner down the field. I think it makes a lot more sense for the Kansas City Chiefs to send Worthy deep downfield. Then there's also Jalen Royals, who's a 4th-round rookie pick. I think that he was more so Rashod Rice insurance, and I really liked Royals coming out. I think he would be great in the Rashod Rice role, but I don't think he's just going to surpass Rashod Rice. Rashod Rice was amazing the last time we saw him here. Now, taking a look at his missed tackles forced, he had 8 in 3 full games. That is insane. You project that out over the entirety of a season, that would have been well over 30. Very good numbers. 0 out of 1 on contested catches. Not enough of a sample size to really care. Now, taking a look at some total season and per game stats. Once again, in 3 games, he had 29 targets. But when you take a look at the targets per game, that's 9.67. That's fantastic. His receptions of 24 is good for 8.0 per game. That is a ridiculous floor if he's able to have, at least 5 to 7, give or take, like he had in 2 of 3 games, with these upside spike weeks of potentially 12, like we saw in week 3 this past season. He had 288 yards, which is 96 per game. And, even in the game in which he only had 5 receptions, he had 75 receiving yards. So he was efficient with his targets, but then also got a lot of volume, and he produced in all 3 games. Now, we take a look at his touchdowns. He scored 2, which is 0.67 per game, excluding that 6% in week 4. I think that there is no reason he can't return to fantasy dominance for us as a very high floor and high ceiling option, kind of in the mold of an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of player for us in fantasy, somebody that has these big, boom, 30-point weeks for us, but should have a very consistent floor as the chain mover in this Chiefs offense. The second player we're going to discuss here is Tetroya McMillan, or T-Mac, of the Carolina Panthers. He's going off the board as the wide receiver 29 in sleeper redraft. I think that is way too low. He should immediately be the clear-cut number 1 option in this Dave Canales offense, led by Bryce Young, who, over the first season and around a half of his career did not look very good, but after his benching, he looked remarkable down the stretch, especially in weeks 16 and 18. Now, we take a look at his athleticism. He ran a 4.58 40-yard dash time, which is only 38th percentile, but, he's over 6'4" and 210 pounds. I really don't care. That's a 103.6 speed score, which is height and weight adjusted, which is 81st percentile. So considering his size, he's actually a very good mover. He's going off the board as the 62nd overall pick at the 6.02. I really think this is just a huge value. You take a look at his production in college. As a true freshman in 12 games, had 39 receptions, 702 receiving yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns on a 17.9% target share. That is fantastic. Even if he's not doing it in the SEC, those are remarkable true freshman numbers. Taking a look at his sophomore season, though, in 13 games, he had 90 receptions, 1,402 yards, and 10 touchdowns on a 28.3% target share. That is dominant sophomore year production. You're talking similar to Luther Burden, except unlike Luther Burden, who is his own specific scenario. I don't really blame him per se. Tetroya McMillan dominated as a junior. In 12 games, so one less, he had 84 receptions, 1,319 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns on a 30.9% target share. The 30.9% target share is absolutely dominant. As you can see in the bottom of your screen here, a 30.9% target share is 92nd percentile for your best target share season as a collegiate prospect. His dominator rating in college of 44.4% was 91st as well. That's his market share of the team's receiving yards and touchdowns. Then we take a look at his breakout age. He did it at a young age. 19.4 is 79th percentile. Now we take a look at his success by routes. Green is above average, yellow is average, and then red is below average. You'll notice that he doesn't have a particularly great success rate on slants or 9 routes. With the 9s, it's just that he really doesn't stack vertically as consistently as we would like. He does have the ability to do it, but I don't really think that's going to be a calling card for him. You'll see that he is dominant in the corner route, the post route, the dig, the out, the comeback, the flat, and the screen. I think that he's going to be used as an X wide receiver. I don't think he's going to be asked to win linearly as much, though. I think he's going to also be moved in the slot. I think he's going to get your dig routes, your out routes, your comebacks a lot in this Dave Canales offense. I think Bryce Young has a very good ball. He's generally pretty accurate. He gets the ball out in time. While he doesn't have, per se, a cannon for an arm, I don't really think, McMillan is going to win as a primary deep threat, per se, although he can do it if necessary. I think he's going to be a dominant portion of this offense. I think he's going to be feasting in the red zone. And I think that, going off the board as a wide receiver 29, that's just way too low for somebody with top 10 draft capital. That's going to be the number 1 option in a Dave Canales offense, led by a quarterback who looked very good at the end of this past season. If I had to project where I think McMillan's going to finish, I think it's somewhere in the 15 to 20 range, which is a drastic increase compared to where he's going in your redraft leagues right now. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mage Jack, and Infamy MTG. If you would like to become a Patreon member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. There we're going to have weekly live streams where we go over, fantasy news, potential buy low candidates, sell high candidates, depending on the news. We're going to give you specific league-oriented roster construction with trade advice based on your specific league settings there. We're going to give you access to early videos. We're going to give you the ability to suggest videos as well. I made a private video for someone on Isaac Rendo, some of the pluses, minuses to his game, things to like, and specific price points to sell or buy for. You're also going to find that we are working on a model with predictive capability for running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends, and wide receivers based on a variety of specific metrics, minimums and maximums to be in an acceptable range for us in fantasy that will be predictive and lead us to being able to be more successful, we think, than the average person in determining which prospects based on these thresholds are likely to hit or unlikely to hit. And we're also going to be updating that each and every single year with the new prospects so that we can continuously have the best model possible. So once again, if you'd like to become a member, the link's going to be below in the comment section. Thanks. Moving on to the third wide receiver we're going to discuss here, it's Stefon Diggs of the New England Patriots. He's going off the board as wide receiver 43 in redraft sleeper leagues. I think this is ridiculous. I think he's by far and away the most likely to lead the Patriots in targets. They paid him an absolute bag to be their wide receiver 1. Yes, he's coming off an ACL tear. All reports are saying that he's good to go. Taking a look this past season at his route win rate, his 52.8% was 8th among wide receivers who are qualified. That's fantastic. Assuming he doesn't regress mightily from that, I think we can expect good things. Also, taking a look at his fantasy points per route run is 0.47 this past season. We're good for 28th. That's not, as dominant as peak Stefon Diggs. But then again, he was also working with a dominant wide receiver 1 in Nico Collins and then also Tank Dell towards the beginning of this past season. I don't really think that is as fair, but I think goes to show that even in an offense that, wasn't particularly suited for him to dominate like past seasons, he still was pretty effective. Now, he's going off the board 95th overall at the 8-11. I think that is ludicrous for the wide receiver 1 on a team that probably is going to need to throw the ball quite a bit. Taking a look at their depth chart, right? Sure, they brought in Trevion Henderson, who is a very good pass-catching back. I think he's definitely going to get a share of targets. They still have Ramondre Stevenson. That running game, I think, is going to be pretty solid for them. They drafted left tackle 4th overall. But when you take a look at the receiving core specifically, Demario Douglas is a slot-only guy. I don't think that is going to do anything to Stefon Diggs. He was paid to be the wide receiver 1. I think he's way more talented than Douglas. Kyle Williams is somebody that I really like as a sleeper. I think he could immediately win the vertical X role in this offense, and I think he's capable of so much more. I do think that he's a long-term threat for touches, but I don't think he's going to just overtake Diggs immediately. Matt Collins is just an X. There is nothing more to his game. That's going to be what he is. Kayshon Boutte is another interesting guy that showed, some flashes, but just isn't really likely to be somebody, in my opinion. Kendrick Bourne doesn't scare anybody either. Jalen Polk was an absolute bum this past season, drop issues galore. And Javon Baker and Chisholm, I really don't think are going to become anything either. Now, they do have Hunter Henry, who's a decent enough tight end, but he's not some target hog, dominant Brock Bowers, Trey McBride-like tight end. He's fine. I think he's definitely going to get a share of targets. But when you take a look at this offense, I think Stefon Diggs is by far and away the number 1 option this season, and I think he is a good bet to easily surpass his ADP. Now, taking a look at something I found on X, per Dynasty Dad, we are not ready for the Stefon Diggs Revenge Tour. I'm not sure exactly what ADP he's looking at, but back on May 20th, he was going off the board apparently as wide receiver 46 in some format, so evidently this ADP hasn't changed too much for him. But in weeks 1 to 8 this past season, he ranked top 15 in receptions, yards, and fantasy points per game. And once again, this was in a much less ideal situation for volume, being behind Nico Collins and then also sharing the field with Tank Dell. So overall, I think that, having Drake May as your quarterback is a good thing. I think I think Stefon Diggs is going to do for Drake May what he did for Josh Allen. I really think we see a big blow up for Drake May. I think we have a great season for Henderson. I think Ramondre Stevenson's a little bit sneaky, but I really think that Kyle Williams and Stefon Diggs are the best bets in this passing game, and I think Stefon Diggs is easily going to be, however, the wide receiver 1 of this offense, and I think he's going to massively surpass his ADP, and I think he should be a top 32 wide receiver this next season, which should present you with a very good value compared to where you have to draft him. Now, taking a look at the 4th and final wide receiver, we have Matthew Golden going off the board as the wide receiver 47. Now, I don't think he's going to reach the maximum upside that he could because of the role that I think he's going to have, but I still think that he's a great value here. So per Matt Gutekunst, obviously he has elite speed. His ability to stretch the field outside the numbers is really, really important. And when you watch film, we thought he arguably had some of the best hands in the draft. I do agree that he does have some of the best hands in the draft. I think that he can win vertically down the field outside. However, this role is generally the worst for us in fantasy in the sense of typically, if you look at the best wide receivers, they have about a 30 to 40% of the time played in the slot and about 60 to 70% of the time out wide. But even generally, slot-only wide receivers are better than boundary-only wide receivers. Now, this quote doesn't explicitly say that he is going to only be a boundary wide receiver, but it does specify that they think they're going to use him that way. I think he's going to play the Christian Watson role, which can be a little bit inconsistent, but has the ability to produce massive games. Now, being selected in the first round, they are going to try to get him the ball. I do think, though, that at this ADP, he is going to crush that ADP. I just don't think that he has, the top 24 potential that he could have if he was in more of a Jaden Reed-like role, or at the very least, not necessarily playing the boundary position in and of itself explicitly. He's being selected 102nd off the board at the 906. I think this is an absolute steal. I mean, when you take a look at the Green Bay Packers depth chart, Jordan Love is fine. I don't think he's a particularly great quarterback, but I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt in that he was injured this past season. He did look great down the stretch of 2023 and in the playoffs as well. But they have dominant RB1 Josh Jacobs. I think as the season kind of progresses, they're going to want to run the ball a little bit more. They have Jaden Reed, though, who's a very dynamic player, but more so a limited player to the slot. He can be used as a running back at times, too, on this Deebo Samuel-like touches. But they selected Matthew Golden in the first round. The other competition is Romeo Doubs, somebody that's a wide receiver 2-3 type, doesn't scare anybody. Christian Watson coming off the ACL tear, that's who I think Golden is replacing. Dontavian Wicks, the separation specialist that can't catch anything. Savion Williams, who could be the most dominant player ever if he could catch anything. Bo Melton's a nobody. Mecole Hardman's a nobody. Malik Heath's a nobody. Really, none of these wide receivers should be scaring you. I think that Matthew Golden does lead the team in targets. And then we have Tucker Kraft, who is a very good tight end, who I think is a very good buy for you in Dynasty and a smash in redraft at his ADP. But nonetheless, I think we do see a little bit of inconsistency with him, but I think he's going to have some massive boom games in this offense. And I don't think that they're only going to use him in the Christian Watson role. I think he's more dynamic than that. And I think they are going to want to have their first round wide receiver actually produce something. I think it would make them look pretty dumb if he doesn't do anything. And why I think he can be a little bit more versatile than a boundary only wide receiver is, yes, he has an 83%, which is above average success rate on the 9 route. He has a 66.7% success rate on the corner and a 77.3% on the post. But if you take a look, his out route is in the green as well as his dig, his flat route, and his screen. His slant route is generally kind of mid, and he's not particularly great at the comeback or curl. Now, one reason I think that this is going to be beneficial is I don't think they're going to explicitly. I think that LaFleur is smart enough to understand his players' strengths and utilize them to their strengths. And so he's much different than somebody like Malik Neighbors, who excels at snapping down and has that vertical plane down pat. I think that he is going to be more so a horizontal type of wide receiver for them, who is going to be asked to stretch the field vertically because he can do that on those 9 routes for sure, and those posts and corners. But I don't think he's going to be nearly as limited, and I don't think he's going to be asked to do things that aren't particularly great and aren't, so much conducive to his strengths. So overall, I think that we are going to be able to expect some big boom games. And I think, regardless as to whether he, becomes a top 24 wide receiver or anything, I don't think it's ludicrous at all to expect him to massively smash his wide receiver 47 overall ADP. And I think that he has the ability to finish as a top 36 wide receiver, albeit probably not better than wide receiver 24 if I had to guess, barring potential touchdown upside. And so to review, the 4 wide receivers that I think are smashes at their current ADP and sleeper redraft are Rashod Rice, Tetroy McMillan, Stefon Diggs, and Matthew Golden. Remember that Rice is going off the board as the wide receiver 20 overall. He's apparently all systems go, no suspension. He should receive plenty of volume, and it shouldn't shock you if he finishes as a top 5 to 8 fantasy wide receiver for us this season. Then we have Troy McMillan going off the board as wide receiver 29 overall. He's a top 10 draft pick, should be the immediate number one in this offense under Dave Canales that looked absolutely booming at the end of this past season. It shouldn't shock you if he finishes as a high-end wide receiver 2, in my opinion. Then we have Stefon Diggs, who's going off the board as a wide receiver 43. He's the clear-cut number one option, connected to Drake May. I think that he should absolutely be a top 36 wide receiver and potentially could be a top 24 wide receiver if things break right for him. And finally, we have Matthew Golden, who's going off the board as a wide receiver 47 overall. A first-round draft pick. While I don't like the projected role that I think he's going to receive to really maximize what he could do for us, I think he should easily finish above the wide receiver 47. I think he should probably be a top 36 wide receiver, which, considering you're getting him outside the top 45 for wide receivers, I think could be a massive value for you. Once again, feel free to subscribe to my Patreon. I'm unable to monetize these videos because I provide a lot of film breakdowns, which will be returning weekly as the NFL season progresses. Feel free to like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate your support. Thank you, and have a good day.